Early life and background. Lewis Nixon was born on September 30th, 1918 in New York City to a well-off family. His father, a businessman, had been involved in the railroad industry, and his family had a relatively comfortable lifestyle. Nixon was educated at the prestigious Trinity School in New York and later attended Harvard University, though he was known to be a rebellious student. He was always known as someone who was independent-minded and determined to follow his own path rather than conform to the expectations placed on him by his family and society. His life would change dramatically in the late 1930s and early 1940s as the clouds of war gathered over Europe. When World War II broke out, Nixon was already of enlistment age and, like many young men of his time, he felt the call to serve his country. The war would prove to be a defining moment in his life. Enlistment in the Army. Nixon enlisted in the U.S. Army during World War II. His background in education and his upper-middle-class status didn't necessarily make him the obvious candidate for military service, but Nixon was determined to play his part in the war effort. He was initially assigned to the Signal Corps, but he soon applied for the elite Airborne Division, where he was selected to join the 101st Airborne Division. The 101st Airborne was one of the most decorated and revered units in the U.S. Army. Composed of paratroopers, soldiers trained to jump out of airplanes into enemy territory, the division played crucial roles in major battles such as the Normandy invasion D-Day, the Battle of the Bulge, and the liberation of concentration camps in Germany. In particular, the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 101st, of which Nixon was a part, was famed for its toughness and bravery. Joining Easy Company. In 1942, Nixon became part of Easy Company, the 2nd Battalion, 506th PIR. This unit would go on to be immortalized in history through the book and mini-series Band of Brothers. Nixon was not only a soldier but also a close friend to Richard Winters, who would eventually rise to command Easy Company. Nixon and Winters were inseparable, forming a bond based on mutual respect, shared experiences, and deep friendship. Easy Company underwent rigorous training at Camp Toccoa, Georgia, where they were taught the basics of airborne warfare, including jumping out of planes, landing, and engaging in combat. The training was brutal, and many men quit or were injured, but Nixon and his comrades pressed on, determined to be among the best. The men of Easy Company developed a special camaraderie that would carry them through the toughest battles of the war, the invasion of Normandy, D-Day. On June 6, 1944, Easy Company participated in the Normandy invasion, also known as D-Day. This was a pivotal moment in the war when Allied forces launched a massive amphibious assault on the coast of Normandy, France, in an effort to liberate Western Europe from Nazi occupation. The 101st Airborne's role was crucial. They were dropped behind enemy lines to secure key positions and disrupt the German defenses before the main invasion force arrived. Easy Company was tasked with securing Carentan, a strategic town that connected the Utah and Omaha beachheads. The night before the invasion, Easy Company parachuted into France in a chaotic and disorienting jump. The men were scattered across the countryside, and many were dropped far from their intended landing zones. Despite the confusion, Easy Company quickly regrouped and began pushing forward with their mission. Nixon, along with his comrades, fought through the countryside, engaging German troops in intense firefights. By the end of the battle, Easy Company had successfully liberated Carentan, and Nixon had already demonstrated his ability to lead under fire and maintain the morale of his men. This battle was one of the first significant tests of his resolve and leadership. The Battle of the Bulge. In December 1944, as the war in Europe was drawing to a close, the Germans launched a last-ditch counter-offensive known as the Battle of the Bulge. The 101st Airborne was stationed at Bastogne, a critical crossroads in Belgium. The Germans encircled the town, and Easy Company, along with other American units, was cut off from supplies and reinforcements. In freezing conditions and under constant attack, the soldiers of Easy Company, including Nixon, endured a brutal siege. Despite being vastly outnumbered and without proper winter clothing, the soldiers of Easy Company held their ground against the German onslaught. Nixon's leadership during this time, as well as his role in maintaining morale among the men, was invaluable. The defense of Bastogne was a defining moment for the 101st Airborne Division, and Nixon, though not in a combat leadership position, demonstrated his importance as part of the company's success, post-war, and return to civilian life. After the end of the war in Europe in May 1945, Easy Company's men, including Nixon, were part of the occupation forces in Germany. They helped to secure key locations and provided assistance in the post-war reconstruction efforts. After returning to the United States in late 1945, Nixon and the rest of the Easy Company veterans faced the difficult transition back to civilian life. Nixon went on to pursue a career in business, leveraging his intelligence and leadership experience to work in various sectors, including electronics and manufacturing. He also maintained a close relationship with many of the men from Easy Company, particularly Richard Winters, who had become a lifelong friend. Nixon's friendship with Winters was one of the key pillars of his life, and the two men often collaborated in business ventures after the war. Winters and Nixon's bond was so strong that they often spoke of their experiences in the war and the importance of what they had accomplished together. Legacy and Band of Brothers. Nixon's story might have remained a part of the annals of history were it not for Stephen E. Ambrose's book, Band of Brothers, published in 1992. Ambrose's detailed account of Easy Company's experiences during World War II catapulted the company's members into the public spotlight. Nixon, who had been a relatively private individual, found himself the subject of media attention. In 2001, HBO aired the miniseries Band of Brothers, based on Ambrose's book. Nixon was portrayed by actor Ron Livingston in the series. The show was a critical and commercial success, bringing Easy Company's story to a global audience. Nixon's portrayal, as well as the portrayal of his deep bond with Winters, resonated with many viewers, ensuring that his legacy would endure for future generations. Though Nixon was not a Medal of Honor recipient, the impact of his service during World War II was profound. His friendship with Winters, his leadership in battle, and his contributions to the post-war efforts of his fellow soldiers were a testament to his character. Nixon's life and experiences have continued to inspire and inform the public's understanding of World War II and the sacrifices made by its veterans. Lewis Nixon's story, while not marked by the highest military honors such as the Medal of Honor, remains an exemplary tale of heroism, leadership, and camaraderie. He was a key figure in one of the most respected military units in American history, the 101st Airborne Division, and his experiences in Easy Company during World War II were crucial to the unit's success in battles like Normandy and the Battle of the Bulge. Post-war, Nixon lived a successful civilian life, but it was his portrayal in Band of Brothers that solidified his place in American military history. Through the lens of his story, we can understand the personal sacrifices, relationships, and grit that defined the soldiers who fought to preserve freedom during World War II. Though he is no longer with us, having passed away in 1995, his legacy endures through the lives of those who remember him and the generations that have been inspired by the extraordinary courage of Easy Company.